Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Leading the Standard. I am Kelly Taylor, and you are tuning into episode 18 of Lead the Standard, balancing the past and present and how static records and living records drive better decisions. As usual, this podcast is an extension of our weekly newsletter, which you can find on LinkedIn, edition number 65. After a week out of the office, I am back and glad to be behind the mic again with Jackie today. But Jackie, I'm going to hand straight back over to you today because I believe you have a really good story to share for this one.
I do, and welcome back, Kelly.
Thank you.
We missed you.
No, you didn't.
Yes, we did. I actually just didn't realise that. I had to do two, well, not on my own. Well, that's when we had our guest speakers. So it was a nice change, but it's nice having you back. And yes, I have a story. And I did share the story in that edition 65 of Lead the Standard. I'm going to try and shorten it a bit, obviously. But it was back a few years ago. I was working with a compliance officer. Let's call him Mark, okay, just for the sake of the story. So he was a compliance officer. So there was two things. So he'd created, say, a manual, and this was just an ISO 9001 system. So he had a quality manual. And then we were also working on like internal audit schedules, internal audit reports, risk registers, that sort of thing. And so one week we had our catch up, and we sort of created a internal audit review, and it was more on a spreadsheet, so he could adjust it each week. And it's still the same thing. It's sort of still update it with what you identified as the evidence, whether it was non-conforming or just an observation, or it was okay. And so that was all going well. He showed me the internal audit review. And then the next week, I was confused.
Oh.
Because when I looked at that same audit review document or record, it had changed. Like it had changed from a non-conformance to, oh no, this is now okay. And then some actions were put in. And I thought, what's going on here? So I actually said, why has this changed? Last week it was not conforming, but now it is. And he said, because I fixed it. So I just updated the report. And that's when so that was one thing before I go to my realization. Then the other thing was, and we have them here as well, like risk register. Our favorite thing is our improvement register. Okay. And internal audit schedule was in this instance the example that we used. He'd put the internal audit schedule within the quality manual. And as you know, because I know that you know all about ISO standards as well, your internal audit schedule or plan is something that changes. It's based on status and importance, risk. And yeah, that's right. And even when you've completed an audit, maybe you might update it to say it was completed and the date. It's something that changes. It's a living, breathing record. Now, if it's embedded in your quality manual, every time you make a change to your schedule, your quality manual version updates. How does that work?
That's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. Like, I'm not saying you can't do it, but there might be a better way. Yes. And that's what got me thinking, like there's two types of records. So one, going back to the internal audit review report, they're snapshots in time. Yeah. So you don't change, and that's a static record. At that point in time, we looked at this and it was not conforming.
Can you imagine if big corporates went back and changed all of their financial records as they
Yeah, well, that's a good, that's a good comparison.
the ATO would not be happy.
No, and that's exactly the case. And look, it was a good light bulb moment for me to realize, oh, some people may not realize what the difference is with these types of records. And, particularly your audit reports, you don't go and change them.
No.
Your non-conformance register, if you've identified non-conformances, you don't remove them. It's be like us. We have an improvement register, and that's where we identify gaps. But once we've filled the gap and implemented the improvement, we just don't go and delete that line.
No, we've got a record of what happened and how it happened.
That's right. That's right.
Is updated.
Exactly. So, as I said, that's sort of what got me thinking, oh, I never realized there was actually two types of records. There's that snapshot in time, and there's living records, I call them. They're living, breathing records. They're living, breathing records of your system. It's ongoing.
Yeah. The other words that I think we use here internally within HubSpot, I suppose, is another good example is the static records. That's your snapshot in time. They don't change. And your active records. So as you said, the living records, they're more common terms as well.
Yeah. So the living records in HubSpot, which is our CRM, are like our dashboard.
Yeah. And also our contact lists, they change as people processes. Yeah. So they live, adapt, they change as people's student experience changes, their purchase experience changes. But our static records are these people enrolled on this date. That's
right. And this course.
Yes. Yeah. They're always going to have enrolled on that date and that course.
Yeah. And this is their ID.
Yeah.
We don't change their student identification. We don't change the date they enrolled. We don't change the course.
No.
Yeah. That's that snapshot in time. So, and I really never realized that there, was this difference. They're both records. And I suppose I might be jumping the gun here, but
not like you.
What? Just explaining that. And look, we've got lots of examples, which I'm sure we'll bring up. But I suppose reflecting back on that interaction and understanding those different types of records, it got me thinking about, well, how do we visualize this? So in the standard, in ISO standards, they refer to retaining documented information. So they use the word retain. Okay. When you see the word retain, it means evidence and records. Yeah. That's good. Yeah. For anyone listening, Kelly's holding her hands together. If you're watching it on YouTube, you'll see what she's doing. Yeah. So it's retain, keep, store. But that means there's two types, the static and the living. So this is this is my great realization. So I came up with this balanced evidence framework. It's a bit of a model. Look, it's not rocket science, believe me. It's just visually showing you these two different types of records and how those two types of records, your static records and your living records, helps with balanced decision making. Okay, so that balanced evidence framework or model, it's just a combination of the static records and living records, which both lead to that balanced decision making.
Which I think go ahead.
ISO does talk about evidence-based or factual approach to decision making.
Yeah, which is where I was going. I think it's a really good way to be able to it's a balanced way of looking at that evidence that you have and applying, okay, this is historically what has happened, but which is your static, and then your trends. If you're living, okay, this is exactly what's happened, but now we're seeing these changes. Apologies to everyone listening. I'm doing interpretive
waving hands.
But yeah, it's a really good way to use, as you said, look, this has happened, this is what did happen, and this is what's adapted, changed as a result.
Yes. No, that's a good way of putting it. And look, the static record on its own has its benefits. The living record on its own also has its benefits, but you'll see and recognize that when you're building a management system, the combination of both helps your system to be, what's the word, more flexible. And that's why I went up that balanced decision making sort of, I suppose, path. It really does. I suppose having both of them within your system helps. Okay.
I don't think you use one without the other. And I know
no, it would be a very, only word I can think of is stiff. Very system. It's not flexible. Either way. It probably goes back to our push-pull episode. We know we talked about push-pull leadership. It's that same balance, and it's in records, boring old records. So I'll go through and explain both, and then how they work together. So the first type of records for better decision making are static records. Now, static records, as I said, are like snapshots in time. I actually think of photos. So
snapshots.
They're snapshots. So, I've got photos of, me when I was 12 years old. My mum hasn't gone back and updated those and scribbled me out and put me in as a 56-year-old. Like, that's a snapshot in time. That's what it was, when I was 12 years old. And of course, I've changed since then, but that's a snapshot in time. Okay, so that's what reminds me of a static record. So it captures, preserves specific moments, specific decisions that are made within the business. So you don't change them. It's like the audit report. That's the snapshot in time. When I write up my audit report as a certification auditor, that's the snapshot in time. I don't go and change that report when I go back the next year. I create a new snapshot in time for what they've done 12 months later. The previous report still stands. That's what was found 12 months before. So that's what I mean. They're unchangeable once they're created. So they're a permanent record of that previous event or decision or observation. All right. A good example there is a signed contract as well. Meeting minutes also. Meeting minutes are a snapshot in time. This is what we discussed. These were the actions. It was on this date. These were the people that attended. It's as simple as that. So I suppose, what's the value of static records? So I suppose it is looking back historically.
Yeah, I think without your static records, and I know we're going to get onto the blending later, so I'm just going to park half of this idea. But with your static records, you don't know, you can't compare past and present. So I know, again, we were talking about before, we can look at where we are now. If you're going back and saying, well, look, in 12 months ago, we had, this was our non-conformances. Now we can look at that and go, okay, we've actioned all these things in our improvement register. They are now conforming. We've got a comparison there.
Yeah.
But if we were to do, as you said, what this other person was doing and going back and click, 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 they're all not. Now have we done better? Are we getting better? Are we getting worse? Has things changed? You can't, again, use that evidence, historical evidence, to compare past and present and plan for the future.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And plus, you're also looking forward as to it's that comparison. That's why we can't go and change them, because then we lose that history.
Yeah. I know, look, a lot of people like to rewrite history, but in the business,
that's right. That's
really helpful to have the actual history so you know if you're doing okay.
It reminds me exactly what you just said. Have you watched Outlander on Netflix?
No, not yet.
They go back in time like 200 years.
Oh,
and there's certain events that they sort of they try not to change history because they know what the history was.
It's just being there.
They inadvertently change the course of history. Like it's and so they are. It just doesn't happen, does it? We can't. That's why I keep saying that you can't change them, because those snapshots, they give us that accurate, it's trustworthy, it's a reference point, which I think is what you were saying. It's a reference point where you can go back and compare. Have we improved? Has it changed? And then that sort of leads into that trends and making decisions.
Quantitative data.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it. So that's static records, snapshots in time. The second type of records for better decision making are the living records. So living records are dynamic. They are continually updated to reflect the ongoing changes, developments, observations within the business. So these records, they're designed, they're meant to be flexible and evolve as new information becomes available. So as I mentioned earlier, these types of records are normally risk registers, maintenance schedules. We have our own improvement register, an internal audit schedule or program as well. So these things are meant to change. They're updated all of the time. I don't know if I can think of any others. There's risk registers, non-conformance registers, improvement registers,
CRM. CRM's
the CRM. Yep.
Clients move through those processes.
Yes, and the different communications. So the emails, the calls, the Zooms. So that our CRM HubSpot. So every time there's a new connection or communication with one of our students, it's updated. It's a living, breathing platform of records.
Assessment files. Every time a student submits an assessment, our LMS updates the student's done this much work. This is right now.
Oh, that's another actually good example of a static, because
I was going to say that's a good balance one, because they completed this at this time. That's the final record, but there's a static record within the living record, or multiple static records within the living records. So I just realized I'm very, very handsy today.
But no, you're right, because as you were saying it, our students have 3 attempts to complete certain assessments. They submit attempt number 1, and it could be marked as satisfactory. If it's not marked as satisfactory, then they complete attempt number 2. We don't override attempt number 1. We have that record of what it was. So, and sorry, I'm going back to static, but you can see that difference. So the living records are normally those register style tables, spreadsheets, that sort of thing. So what's the difference, I suppose, with value with the living records? So with the static, we were saying it was a good, trustworthy, historical, unchanged snapshot in time. So with living records, I suppose we could say it's current, it's the relevant information. I love how you say it helps us to pick up trends as well.
I was going to say that your static is your benchmark, and then your living is where you're kind of coming along with that. Yeah.
Kelly's waving her arms up and down if you were listening. So
I think I should be sitting on my hands, but it's hard to do with standing.
But maybe, and I know you're waving your arms up and down, but it helps people to pick up new things, adapt to changes, make real-time decisions based on the latest data.
Yeah, there's no point in going back and going, oh, 3 years ago we said we were going to do this. Well, actually now we have different products, different people, all of those different systems.
That's right.
That's not relevant anymore. But the data that we had from there of our sales figures or our revenue, our customer database, our social followers at that time is still relevant to that time. But we're not making decisions today based on our results, I suppose, from 3 years ago. Exactly.
And our results 3 years ago give us an indication of where we were 3 years ago, but mainly our decision making is based on that ongoing living stuff, even if it's a comparison of the static stuff.
Yeah. And that's it. It's a comparison. It's not the foundation, I guess.
Yes. So to me, that's a good segue then to the balanced decision making, which we've sort of touched on as we explain these separately. But I suppose I wanted to explain them separately first to, I suppose, highlight that they are useful methods on their own individually. But even as Kelly and I have been explaining them, we've been combining them naturally anyway, which shows how they do work really well together and helps with that balanced decision making. So the combination of static and living records gives you the tools for even better, well-balanced decision making. So static records and living records each have their own strengths on their own independently, but their true power, as we've discovered, is unlocked when they're used together. And Kelly's given some really good examples there. So as we said, just to recap, the static records give us that historical context. The living documents, on the other hand, are more flexible, agile. They help us to make decisions made on current information. And then the combination of comparison of static records helps us to identify trends as well, and then helps us with decision making. So that's why with the combination of both static and those dynamic or living records, we can make more, I suppose, well-balanced. And I like current, the word current decisions. And it's based on fact.
Yeah, I'd love to make a lot of decisions based on where we were 12, 18 months ago, because they would be much simpler, but they wouldn't get us anywhere. They wouldn't help us grow. They wouldn't help us achieve what we're now able to achieve. So, it is very important to understand the context, I suppose, of each of those type of documents. The other thing, which I wanted to say earlier, but I've restrained myself today, was if you're looking at your static records, your snapshot in time, like Mark was, mark, and you're updating those as you go, you're creating a lot of unnecessary work for yourself. So you're kind of doing yourself a few disservices. As we said, you're not having true factual, evidence-based decision making, because the facts or the evidence is changing a lot. So there's that first part there. But also you are creating that extra work, having to go back and change things that, look, just set and forget. Do it, leave it, and then review it in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, whatever.
Yeah.
When it's more relevant. And then you can actually see, well, look, I made that change, but it didn't work. So technically we're still not compliant. Or, okay, that really did work. We're definitely compliant. You can actually make a more appropriate decision on how things have progressed. And again, by leaving that record static.
Absolutely. And when you were saying that, 2 words came to mind: that transparent and clear. But, with our systems, you do need to be transparent, open, and clear with, well, this is where we were at. And hey, isn't that great to see where you were at and then compare it to now and see what's changed?
Yeah.
And how you've improved.
Yeah. How excited do people get when they can see, oh, last year we did this. Oh my God, now we're doing this. Like you can feel
That's right.
lift.
That's right.
And look, we've got a great team. Sometimes we don't look at last year's and go, yes, we've improved. We go, oh, we didn't do as good. But that gives the team the opportunity, and ours does it, and I love it. They go, okay, what did we do? Let's look at what we did this time. Didn't work. Okay, let's change.
Yeah.
You can't do that if you're changing your static records.
No. And I think before, when you mentioned about static records, that you can't go back to a record 2 or 3 years ago and make a decision. The big takeaway from that was, well, even if that record 2 or 3 years ago, and you and I do this all the time, we think we know what the corrective action might be, last year, but due to resources, time, factors, whatever, we haven't implemented the corrective action yet. But then when we revisit it, everything's changed anyway.
Yeah. Standards change, systems change, change, business goals change. So it's, and we again, a perfect example was our last internal audit. We haven't done that corrective action yet. Actually, we actually did this separate to that, and we've done it better, and we've ticked off these ones without even realizing it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I like. You actually end up doing it naturally and then forget that you wrote that a year ago, and you think, oh, I've done nothing, I haven't achieved anything, but in actual fact you have.
Yeah. Feel that there's some confetti moments.
Yeah, don't talk to me about confetti. No, that's so true. And I suppose you and I are just sharing what's happened to us anyway. Yeah. So, have you got anything else to add before I recap?
No, I think it is really important to acknowledge those different records. I said, again, going back and reviewing things that happened in the past when things have changed. Actually, really good example, so it just came to my head. We talk about in all of our training, and we've talked about it before, was when you're conducting, I'm going to bring it back to auditing, when you're conducting an audit, you don't go, if something's changed, you don't go back and look at we look at your last audit report, but you're not looking at all of the ones before that. Or if a new system's been in place, well, some of those records aren't going to be relevant.
Yeah.
You need to apply that to your business, your clients, all of those sorts of things. look at the information that's relevant and make those decisions. Don't waste time going back through the last 10 years of, oh, but this happened then and this happened then and this happened then. If it's not relevant to how you are currently operating your business, your client's business, your team, whatever that is. So I think that's...
Stay in scope.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, that's a really good point, because we can get distracted with the other stuff that's not relevant, as you say. Yeah. Okay, well done. So just to cap it off, it's really quite straightforward. I feel like I'm not sharing anything, any rocket science stuff here, but getting back to basics sometimes helps us with these light bulb moments. So we talked about static records, snapshots in time, like photographs, living records, so that's ongoing, updated, current, we can make better decisions on, and then the combination of both helping us to make decisions based on fact, and a bit more balanced, using the static records to compare. I think that comparison was a good word that came out of that. Which sort of blends into that, those trends sort of blend into that living records by comparing the static records. So that is a combination of those two and the balanced decision making that helps with your ISO system. So as always, before I hand it back to Kelly, I'd like to close with stay curious and always lead the standard. By staying curious and leading the standard, you'll continually find new opportunities for growth and excellence in your career.
Nice. I like that. Excellent. Thank you, Jackie. Well, as you said, this wraps up today's episode on static records and living records and driving better decisions. So we do, as always, hope you felt that this discussion, found this discussion valuable. I need another holiday. It's been 2 days. And remember to join us next week, where we will be discussing another great topic, from quality manager to quality leader. 5 steps to elevate your career. And I recommend that you tune in whether you are in the quality space or not. This will be a great discussion. So until next time, keep leading the standard, and we will see you next episode. Bye for now. Thanks for joining us once again as we lead the standard. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast for more episodes just like this. And don't forget to leave a review if you found today's episode informative and inspiring. If you're already an ATOL student, remember, participating in live Q&A sessions just like this is one of the exclusive perks of your enrolment. And if you're not already a student, join us at our website, www.auditortrainingonline.com, to learn more about our courses and how you can start making a difference in your career in ISO management system standards. So join us again next week as we not just meet the standards, but we lead them.